Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Thanks. I remember the sound before I remember the fear. That low, uneven hum of my tires over cracked asphalt. It was late September, 2022. I'd been driving 12 hours straight from Baton Rouge to Asheville. No playlists, no podcasts, just the road. I told myself the trip was about clearing my head, but really, it was running away in slow motion. My mom had died 3 weeks earlier, and the apartment we shared still smelled like her vanilla lotion. Every drawer I opened was a landmine. So when a college friend texted me to visit the mountains, I just grabbed a duffel and left. I drove through Mississippi rain, Alabama gas stations, and the endless green hush of Georgia pine. By the time I hit the Tennessee border, the sun was melting down behind the hills and I was fighting that glassy-eyed exhaustion that makes the road shimmer. My GPS said another hour to Asheville. Easy. Then came the sign. Scenic detour, Route 129. Normally, I'd stick to the interstate. But that word, scenic, caught me. I figured I'd stretch my legs somewhere along the way, grab a coffee, maybe get a few quiet miles of peace. The road twisted up into forest. The trees leaned close like they wanted to listen. The radio went static, so I shut it off. I cracked the window and let the smell of pine drift in. For a while, it was nice. Then my gas light blinked on. Of course, I muttered, checking my phone. No signal. Battery at 19%. I passed one of those wooden mileage signs. Carter's Ridge, 12 miles, small town, maybe a gas station. I told myself I'd make it. The forest thickened until the daylight barely touched the road. Somewhere behind me, something howled. Maybe a coyote. Maybe just my imagination filling the quiet. When I finally saw lights ahead, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for miles. It was a single gas station. Old. The kind with a bell that dings when you pull up. A flickering sign read Foster's Fuel and Food. I got out, stretching my back. The air was cool and wet, carrying that metallic smell right before rain. Inside, the place was almost empty. Just a man behind the counter, maybe in his 50s, wiry build, gray beard, wearing a camo hat. He looked up as I entered. "Pumps prepay only," he said, voice gravelly. "Right. Yeah. How far's Carter's Ridge? You're in it." He cracked a grin. "Ain't much to see, I'll warn you." I paid for $20 of gas and a coffee that tasted like burnt motor oil. He handed me change, eyes flicking toward the window. "You driving alone?" "Yeah, sure," I said, forcing a small smile. "Keep it that way," he muttered. I laughed, but he didn't. Back outside, I started the pump. The station lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the trees, a branch snapped. I told myself it was just the wind, until I saw a flash of movement in my mirror. Someone was standing at the edge of the woods, too far to see clearly, but the silhouette was tall, still, watching. I froze, one hand on the nozzle. "You good?" The voice made me jump. It was another man, younger, maybe late 20s, walking up from the side of the building with a cigarette. He wore a faded denim jacket, the kind that looked older than him. "Yeah, just long drive," I said. "You're not from around here," he said, exhaling smoke. "Nope, just passing through. Best keep passing." He smiled when he said it, but it didn't reach his eyes. The pump clicked off. I replaced the nozzle, got in the car, locked the doors. When I looked back toward the woods, the figure was gone. I started driving. The first few miles were fine. Then my headlights caught something. Tire tracks veering off into the trees, mud still wet. A few minutes later, a car appeared ahead of me. Old pickup, no taillights. Moving slow, too slow. Every time I tried to pass, it drifted toward the center line, blocking me. The road was narrow. One wrong move and I'd be in a ditch. I honked once, nothing. "Come on, man," I whispered, gripping the wheel. Then the truck's brake lights flared, sudden blinding red. I slammed my own brakes, heart hammering. The truck idled there, motionless. After a few seconds, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, lean, wearing a denim jacket. He just stood in the headlights, head tilted slightly like he was trying to recognize me. "What the hell?" I threw the car into reverse, tires squealing. The truck's engine roared, but instead of following, the man turned and walked toward the trees, vanishing into the dark. I didn't wait to find out more. I reversed until I found a dirt road branching off and gunned it. The GPS was useless, no signal, no maps. The road wound uphill deeper into forest. After 10 minutes, I realized I was lost. The gas light blinked again. I pulled over beside a small wooden cabin, boarded windows, no trespassing sign. It looked abandoned, but there was a faint light inside, like someone using a lantern. I debated driving off, but if someone lived there, maybe they had a phone, directions, something. I got out, flashlight in hand, and called. "Hello? I'm sorry, and I'm lost. My car's almost out of gas." No answer. I knocked. The door creaked open an inch. Inside smelled of damp wood and old smoke. My flashlight caught a table, maps, Polaroids, empty beer cans. And on one wall, dozens of license plates, some bent, some blood spattered. I took a step back, heart slamming in my chest. Then I saw it. On the table, a denim jacket folded neatly. Footsteps creaked on the porch behind me. "Told you to keep passing through," a voice said. I spun, shining the light, but he was faster. His hand hit the flashlight, sending it clattering. Darkness swallowed the room. I ran. Branches whipped my face as I tore through the trees. I didn't look back until I reached the road, chest burning. My car was still there, engine idling. I dove in, slammed the lock, floored it. The tires screamed, gravel flying. The road blurred by in streaks of black and silver. When I finally saw highway signs again, real green ones, I started crying. Full-on shaking sobs, adrenaline crashing. I didn't stop until I hit Asheville and checked into a motel that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. The next morning, daylight made it all feel like a fever dream. But when I went to grab coffee, I noticed something on my rear bumper, a handprint. Muddy, clear as day. I called the county sheriff. They sent a deputy, asked a few questions, took photos. He said, "Wait, we've had some reports. Travelers going missing off Route 129. Locals think it's squatters." "I think it's worse." He looked at me carefully. "You're lucky, ma'am. You saw him and drove away. Most folks don't get that far." That night in my motel bed, I kept hearing his words. Most folks don't get that far. 2 weeks later, curiosity gnawed at me. I looked up Carter's Ridge online. Half the posts were rumors. Haunted highway. Missing hikers. Locals don't talk after dark. But one caught my eye. Foster's Fuel shut down in 2020. Burned down after a robbery. No survivors. I stared at the screen, chills crawling up my arms. I hadn't imagined it. The bell, the counter, the man in the camo hat. But if the station burned down 2 years before I was there, then who the hell had I talked to? I never took Route 129 again. I fly now every time, but sometimes when I'm on an empty stretch of road at night, headlights cutting through dark pine, I swear I see a flicker of red brake lights ahead, and the outline of a man in a denim jacket stepping into the trees. And I remember his voice, low and steady, right before everything went wrong. I was 31 when I decided to quit my job, not in a triumphant, follow your dreams kind of way. More like I was tired of living the same loop, watching months blend together like smudged lines on a dirty windshield. I'd been a telecommunications lineman for almost a decade, the kind of job that kept me halfway up poles in freezing wind, with no one to talk to except the occasional dispatcher over radio. The plan was simple. Drive from my small town in Montana down to Utah, visit my sister, and figure out what the hell to do with the rest of my life. No destination after that. Just the road. I left in early October 2021. The air had that crisp, sharp smell that feels like change. My old 2006 Silverado, green with a busted taillight, was loaded with a cooler, a toolbox, and a sleeping bag I hadn't used since my 20s. I figured I'd stay at cheap motels along the way. Maybe camp out once or twice for nostalgia's sake. By the second night, I'd hit the long, empty stretch of US Highway 191, somewhere between Rock Springs and Price. It was the kind of highway that plays tricks on your head. One song feels like it lasts an hour, and the shadows out the corner of your eyes start looking like movement. Around 10:45 p.m., my fuel light blinked on. The next marked station was 38 miles ahead. I muttered shit under my breath and scanned the side of the road, hoping for some tiny roadside gas shack. Nothing. Just black hills and the occasional power line pole fading into the dark. At 11:06, I finally saw something. A flickering blue sign. Exit 43, rest stop and gas. It wasn't on my GPS, which was weird. The map just showed a straight line of highway, but I didn't have much choice. I pulled off the exit and rolled into a cracked asphalt lot with faded white paint lines. The place looked ancient. One gas pump stood under a rusty metal awning, its glass numbers half broken. Behind it was a small building, part convenience store, part diner, part something else that had seen better decades. The only light came from a buzzing neon sign in the window. Open. I parked near the pump, stepped out, and stretched. The air smelled like dust and old rain. The silence was strange, not peaceful, just empty. Inside, the place was dimly lit. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle. The floor tiles were yellowed, the kind of color that used to be white. A radio was playing some old country song softly in the corner. Behind the counter, an older man looked up. Mid-60s maybe, with deep lines around his mouth and a mechanic's jacket that said Harlan. "Evenin'," he said, his voice raspy. "Pump's still working, but you gotta pay cash before fillin'." "That's fine," I said, pulling a few 20s from my wallet. "Been driving for hours. Didn't think I'd find anything open this late." He nodded slowly, folding the bills into the register. "Not many come through this stretch anymore. Used to be busier before they built the bypass. Guess I'm lucky then." He handed me a receipt and said, "You might want to stick around after filling up. Storm's coming through from the west. Could make the road slick." I turned toward the glass door. The night outside looked still, calm even. "Storm?" I asked. He shrugged. "Always one, sooner or later." I forced a smile and stepped back outside. The pump's digital display blinked faintly when I lifted the nozzle. As the gas flowed, I caught something strange in my peripheral. Movement near the far side of the lot, where the asphalt met a stretch of dark trees. Looked like someone standing there, a tall figure, motionless. I blinked. Gone. I shook my head. "You're just tired," I muttered, capping the tank and sliding the nozzle back. Inside, Harlan was still behind the counter, eyes on a small TV showing local news. I grabbed a coffee from the machine. It tasted burnt but hot, and sat at one of the diner-style booths by the window. The radio crackled, then shifted to static. "Think your station's cutting out," I said. He didn't answer. "Harlan?" He turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" I said. I froze. His face looked off. The light from the TV flickered across him, and for a second his skin looked grayish, his eyes darker. Then, just like that, normal again. He coughed. "You said something?" I swallowed. "Never mind," I finished my coffee fast and stood up. "Appreciate the help. I'll hit the road before the storm." "Suit yourself," he said. "But if you start seeing lights in the trees, keep driving." "Don't stop," I forced a laugh. "What, like ghost lights?" He didn't laugh back. "Just don't stop," he said again, quietly. I drove off around 11:40. The highway stretched empty ahead. No taillights, no signs. The gas gauge finally looked decent, but my gut felt heavy. 10 miles later, I noticed it. Headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just another car catching up. But it stayed the same distance no matter how fast I went. When I slowed down, it slowed too. When I changed lanes, so did it. I rolled my window slightly and leaned toward the side mirror. The car behind me didn't have modern lights. They were yellowed, old, like halogens from the 80s. A chill crawled up my neck. "Probably just some local," I whispered to myself, though my voice trembled. I drove like that for another 15 minutes. Then out of nowhere, the lights vanished. No turnoff, no fade. Just gone. I exhaled shakily. Okay, you're fine." Then my truck's radio crackled, not static this time. "You should have stayed at the station." My blood froze. It was a man's voice, and deep, drawn out. I turned the radio off completely, but the voice kept coming through faintly, like it wasn't through the speakers anymore. "You shouldn't have left." I slammed my palm on the dashboard. What the hell is this? The highway marker I passed next read Exit 43, Hillsdale. I hadn't turned around. I hadn't looped back. But somehow I was seeing the same exit again. I pulled over, shaking. The wind outside had picked up, tossing sand across the road. When I stepped out to catch my breath, I saw something in the ditch. An old road sign half buried in dirt. Hillside Rest Stop, closed since 2016. My stomach flipped. That wasn't the same name. The sign at the station had said Hillside. This said Hillsdale. I got back in the truck and locked the doors. That's when I noticed the prints on the inside of the passenger window, 5 smudged fingerprints, too small to be mine. I stared at them until my chest felt tight. Then slowly they faded, like condensation clearing. The voice came again, closer this time. Keep the curtains closed. I floored the gas and didn't stop until I saw a 24-hour diner near a truck stop. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely park straight. Inside, a woman with a ponytail behind the counter gave me a wary smile. Rough night? She asked. You could say that, I muttered. Hey, you ever hear of a place called Hillside Rest Stop? Exit 43? Her smile faltered. You're joking, right? No, why? She wiped her hands on a towel. That place burned down years ago. Lightning hit the tank. Killed the owner. I stared at her. His name wasn't Harlan, was it? She froze. Yeah, you knew him? I shook my head. I don't think so. She frowned. Where'd you say you came from? I didn't answer. My throat felt tight. I paid for the coffee and sat outside on the curb, trying to make sense of it. The sun was rising faintly behind the hills. When I got back into my truck, my dash cam light was blinking red, meaning it had recorded something overnight. I played the footage back later that afternoon at a rest stop outside. Provo, the timestamp 11:47 p.m. The camera showed me sitting in the booth at the gas station diner talking to Harlan. Then for one single frame, the video glitched, and for that fraction of a second, there were 2 of me in the image, one sitting at the booth and one standing just outside the window looking in. My reflection blinked, but the one inside didn't. I shut off the cam, deleted the file, and drove straight through to Utah without stopping. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've had this strange thing happen whenever I drive long stretches at night. My radio will cut to static for a second, just long enough for me to hear a man's voice whisper, "Don't miss the turn," and if I check my GPS too fast, sometimes, just sometimes, there's a flicker on the screen. A blue pin exit 43, even though the highway doesn't have one anymore. Last month, I looked it up again just to prove to myself it was all nerves. There's no record of any Hillside Rest Stop or Hillsdale ever being built near that stretch of 191. No burned buildings. No old man named Harlan, nothing. But 2 nights ago, my sister called me at 3:13 a.m. "Hey," she said, voice shaky. "You left a voicemail." I didn't leave anything, I told her. She was quiet for a second. "It was your number." It just said, her breath hitched. "Keep the curtains closed. I haven't driven since, but sometimes when I sit in my truck and turn the ignition just to let the heater run, my side mirror catches something behind me, a shape, tall, still, head tilted, just enough that it looks like it's listening. And I swear if I stay quiet long enough, I can hear tapping. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Just like before. And I know one night soon, I'll have to drive again, and when I do, I'll check every exit sign, every mile marker, and pray that I don't see 43, because if I do, I'm not stopping. Not again. I used to think driving across the country would fix me, that somewhere between one state line and the next, the past would just stay behind me. But the road doesn't heal you. It listens, it watches, and sometimes it gives you something back you never asked for. It started the summer I turned 25. I'd just broken off a long relationship, quit my job at an HVAC company in Flagstaff, and packed my whole life into a black 2011 Toyota Corolla that burned oil faster than it burned gas. My plan was simple: drive to Seattle, stay with a friend until I figured out what came next. It was supposed to be a fresh start. The car was loaded with 2 duffel bags, a guitar I couldn't play, a thrift store blanket, and a box of old Polaroids that I didn't have the heart to throw out. The driver's seat was torn, the glove box didn't shut right, and the air conditioner only worked when it wanted to. But it was mine. That night I left after sunset. Arizona heat had finally cooled to something bearable, and I figured if I drove through the night, I'd hit Idaho by dawn. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not my parents, not my ex, not even my landlord. I just drove. For the first few hours, it felt good. The empty road, the hum of tires, the desert wind sliding through the half-open window. It was freedom or something close to it. The radio played low. an old country station fuzzing in and out. I remember tapping the steering wheel to a song I didn't even know the words to. Around midnight, I crossed into Utah. The moon was high and bright, washing everything in this pale, ghostly light. The road stretched endlessly ahead, cutting through miles of nothing but scrub and sand. My GPS had lost signal about an hour earlier. I didn't care.
I had gas, a few Red Bulls, and that young...
Stupid belief that nothing bad ever happens to people like me. Then, at mile marker 327, I saw her. A woman standing on the shoulder, thumb out, her other hand clutching something, maybe a purse or a coat. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, a pale dress, ankle-length, old-fashioned somehow. At first, I thought I was imagining it. You don't see hitchhikers in the middle of nowhere at 12:43 a.m., but she was real. I slowed down out of instinct. The beams of my headlights caught her face, dirt-smeared, eyes wide and glassy. She looked exhausted, like she'd been walking for miles. I rolled the window halfway down. "You okay, ma'am?" She stepped closer, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Car broke down. My phone died. Please, I just need to get to Cedar Ridge." I glanced around. No car, no lights, nothing. Just desert. "You out here alone?" I asked. She nodded once. Please. It's not far." Something about the way she said that made my stomach tighten, but leaving her there didn't sit right either. "All right," I said finally. "Hop in. I'll take you as far as the next town." She climbed into the passenger seat, clutching that old leather bag against her chest. She smelled faintly of dust and rain, the kind of scent you only notice when the air's too still. "I'm Ryan," I said, glancing at her. "What's your name?" She smiled faintly. "Grace." Her voice was soft, deliberate. "Grace," I repeated. So, what were you doing out here?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze stayed locked on the windshield. "I was driving home. Took the wrong exit. Where's home?" She tilted her head slightly like she was trying to remember. "Just past the bridge," I frowned. "Bridge?" "There's a bridge up ahead," she said quietly. "You'll see it." We drove in silence for a few minutes. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a thin silver ribbon in the dark. At some point, I realized the air inside the car had turned cold, colder than it should have been. My breath fogged faintly in the headlights. "You cold?" I asked, reaching for the heat knob. She didn't look at me. "It's fine." Her tone made me stop. "You sure?" She turned then, eyes catching the glow from the dashboard. They weren't wrong exactly, just too dark, too wide, like she was staring at something far behind me. "You missed the turn," she said softly. My hand froze on the steering wheel. "What turn?" "The one to the bridge." I glanced in the rear view. I didn't see any turn. "You passed it," she whispered. She doesn't like when people miss it. Who doesn't? I asked, her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "My mother." A chill rolled down my neck. "Grace," I said slowly, "where exactly are we going?" She didn't answer, just turned back toward the window. I looked down at the dashboard clock. 12:54 a.m. The mile marker outside read 3:27 again. I frowned. That couldn't be right. A few minutes later, another sign. Mile 327. "What the hell?" I muttered. Grace whispered, "Sometimes it doesn't let you leave." "Okay, what are you talking about?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "What doesn't let you leave?" But she wasn't looking at me anymore. Her face was turned toward the window, blank, and then she was gone. I mean gone. One blink, the seat was empty. No door sound, no movement, nothing. Just the faint smell of rain and something else. Something metallic. I slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed before jerking to a stop on the shoulder. Heart hammering, I threw open the door and stumbled out into the night. "Grace!" The desert swallowed my voice. Nothing but wind and silence. Then faintly from behind me, a voice. "You missed the turn." I spun around. Empty road. That's when I saw the handprints. Pale, small, on the inside of the windshield. I stumbled back, breath ragged. They faded slowly, as if melting into the glass. My body moved before my mind caught up. I dove into the car, slammed the door, and floored it. The tires kicked up gravel, the headlights slicing through endless dark. For what felt like hours, I drove. The road looped and twisted, mile markers repeating like a broken record. 7, 327, 327. At one point, I started laughing, a broken, hysterical sound I didn't recognize as my own. Then suddenly, a light ahead. Neon Red A Diner. I pulled in hard, brakes squealing, gravel spraying the dark. Inside, the place was warm and empty, smelling of coffee and grease. A woman behind the counter looked up, startled. Her name tag read Linda. "You okay there, hun?" she asked. I must have looked insane. "You seen a woman come through here? Maybe early 30s, long brown hair, white dress?" She frowned. "Not tonight. You need some water?" "No," I hesitated. She said she needed a ride. Her name was Grace. Said she was headed home past a bridge. Linda's face drained of color. "Where'd you say you picked her up?" "Mile 327, I said. Her eyes flicked toward the corner of the diner where an old newspaper clipping was pinned under glass. She nodded toward it. "You might want to read that." I walked over. The headline said, "Mother and daughter killed in highway flood, June 3rd, 1997. The photo showed a crushed blue sedan pulled halfway off a collapsed bridge. 2 names were listed underneath, Margaret Collins, 41, and Grace Collins, 25. Linda's voice came softly behind me. "That bridge washed out over 20 years ago. Folks still see her sometimes, always around mile 327. I stared at the picture until my hands started shaking. "Sometimes," Linda went on, "they say she's still trying to get home." I sat there for hours, drinking burnt coffee and watching the sun rise. When I finally stepped outside, the air was warm again. My car sat in the gravel lot, covered in a fine layer of dust. Before getting in, I checked the passenger window. Faintly, just barely visible in the morning light, 2 sets of prints. One small, one larger. I told myself it was residue from last night, condensation maybe. But deep down I knew better. I got back in, started the car, and drove toward daylight. My phone buzzed weakly, service returning. 1 new voicemail. Time-stamped 12:27 a.m. I hit play static for a few seconds. Then a soft voice, distorted, whispering, "You missed the turn." I threw the phone into the passenger seat and pressed harder on the gas. It's been years since then, but I still think about Grace, about the bridge that isn't there anymore, about the cold air and those repeating mile markers. Every time I drive alone at night, I keep one hand tight on the wheel and one eye on the rear view. Because sometimes when the radio cuts out for no reason, I swear I see her reflection, sitting right where she used to, hands folded in her lap, staring at the road ahead. And every now and then, just before the next mile marker appears, I hear that whisper again, soft, patient, almost kind. "Don't miss the turn this time." I used to love driving at night. There was something about the open road, how it made everything else fade. No noise, no people, no hospital alarms blaring in my ears. Just the hum of the tires, a cup of bad coffee, and miles of highway swallowing the world whole. My name's Aaron Blake. I'm 36, a traveling respiratory therapist based out of Portland. I bounce between hospitals and clinics across the Pacific Northwest, filling in wherever they're short-staffed. The money's good, but the road, it wears on you after a while. There's only so much solitude you can pretend to enjoy before it starts to chew at the edges of your sanity. That night, God, I still replay it sometimes. It was supposed to be a simple drive. Just 3.5 hours from Medford to Portland. I'd finished a 10-day rotation at a rural hospital and decided to skip the hotel and head home early. It was mid-July, air still warm even after dark, and I just wanted my own bed. I hadn't seen my cat in almost 2 weeks, and the idea of waking up in my apartment again felt like heaven. The clock on my dash said 10:22 p.m. when I got on I-5 North. Tank half full, cooler in the passenger seat with 2 cans of Diet Dr. Pepper, and a playlist of old 2000s rock that I only ever listened to on long drives. It's funny. Looking back, I remember every little thing from that night. The flickering light at exit 63, the smell of pine from the open window, the way my hands felt stiff from holding the wheel too long. I had no idea how burned into my brain those details would be. I made it about an hour north before the first sign of trouble. The low fuel light blinked on near a town called Silver Run. Not a place you'd find on any tourist brochure. More like 3 streets, 2 bars, and a gas station that looked abandoned. I remember muttering, "Oh, damn it, Aaron," and laughing to myself because I'd promised my dad I'd stop being the kind of idiot who pushes the tank too far. Dad used to say, "You plan for the road like you plan for surgery. You don't guess, you prepare." He was a surgeon. Still is, though retired now. Cold, brilliant, never wrong about anything except that night. Anyway, I took the next exit, a narrow ramp that spilled onto a two-lane road lined with tall firs. No cell signal. The radio went fuzzy halfway down, but after a few minutes I saw a glowing sign through the trees. Hollow Creek Gas and Diner. It looked like something from the 80s. A squat building with a flickering red sign, one lonely pump and a diner attached. There were 2 cars in the lot, a dusty white pickup and a beat-up Buick that looked like it hadn't moved in weeks. Still, the lights were on, so I pulled in. I got out, stretching my legs. The air smelled like rain on asphalt, sharp and clean. A man in a trucker cap leaned against the pickup, smoking. He nodded at me. "Evening," he said. "Hey," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Pump still work?" He took a long drag. "Yeah, sometimes takes cash, though. Card reader's dead." "Great," I muttered, half to myself. He gave a little grin, the kind of grin that doesn't reach the eyes. "Ain't much open past 11 out here. You're lucky you caught it." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, forced a polite smile, and headed inside to pay. The diner part was half empty. A ceiling fan turned lazily above red vinyl booths. An old woman stood behind the counter, sorting receipts. Her name tag said Lorraine in faded letters. "Gas on pump 1? I asked. She looked up, expression unreadable. "You got cash?" "Yeah," I said, pulling a 20 from my wallet. She rang it up and handed me a receipt that looked like it came from a typewriter. Then just as I turned to go, she said something that made me pause. "You shouldn't drive past Hollow Creek tonight." Her tone wasn't mean, just flat. Matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. I frowned. "Why's that?" "Road washed out," she said quickly. Then after a beat, "You'd be better off waiting till morning." I tried to smile. "Appreciate it, but I really need to get home." She didn't answer. Just looked at me like she wanted to say more but didn't dare. Outside, the man with the cigarette was gone. The pump clicked once, then again, then stopped. I topped off, got back in the car, and turned the key. For the first 10 miles, it was uneventful. The highway was nearly empty, just me and the occasional 18-wheeler screaming past. The moon was full, hanging low over the tree line. I rolled the window down a little, letting the cool air hit my face. Then I saw it. A car on the shoulder, flashers blinking. Black sedan, maybe a decade old, hood up. I slowed out of habit more than anything else. When you work in healthcare, you can't turn that instinct off. You see someone in trouble, you check. A man stood beside it, waving. He looked mid-40s, clean jeans, flannel shirt. His stance was relaxed, not frantic. Still, something about the way he moved, slow, deliberate, made the hair on my arms rise. I pulled to the side, window halfway down. "You okay?" I called. He stepped closer, hands in pockets. "Yeah, I think so. Car just died on me. You wouldn't happen to have jumper cables, would you?" "Maybe," I said. "Pop your hood, I'll check." He hesitated, then smiled, too wide. "Sure thing." As I leaned to grab the cables from the back seat, I glanced up and froze. There was someone sitting in his passenger seat. A woman. Or at least I thought it was. Her head was tilted down, long hair covering her face. I could just barely make out the pale curve of her cheek in the dim light. When I looked back at him, he was closer. Too close. "Hey," I said, forcing a light tone. "Actually, my battery's been touchy lately. Might not help much." His smile didn't move, but his eyes did, flat and dark. "That's all right. You could give us a ride to the next exit instead." I don't really have room," I lied. "Sorry." He stepped forward, hand on my window frame. "Won't take long." That's when I saw it. The woman in the car lifted her head. Her face was wrong. No features. Just smooth, pale skin where eyes and a mouth should have been. Like someone erased her, I didn't think. I slammed the gas. The man shouted something, but his voice warped, bending in my ears. My headlights cut across his car as I tore back onto the highway, and in that instant, I saw there was no license plate. No rear window. And no reflection in the glass. I drove like hell. 90, maybe more. My chest was tight, breath coming in short bursts. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting that black car to appear again behind me. It didn't. What did appear, about 15 minutes later, was a rest stop. The sign said Pine Hollow Station, 1 mile. I didn't even hesitate. I pulled in, heart still hammering, and parked under the brightest light I could find. A vending machine buzzed near the bathrooms, the only sound besides the hum of crickets. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel. "Get a grip, Aaron," I whispered. It was dark. You imagined it. But even as I said it, my hands were shaking too hard to convince myself. I decided to get out, stretch, maybe splash some water on my face. The air smelled damp and earthy. A single car sat at the far end of the lot, a silver SUV, engine off. Inside, I could see someone in the driver's seat, head resting against the window like they were asleep. I went into the restroom. Flickering lights, cracked mirror, the works. When I came out 2 minutes later, the SUV was still there, but the person inside wasn't. I felt it before I saw it. That prickling at the back of your neck. When you know you're being watched, a sound broke the quiet. Tap, tap, tap. 3 soft taps on my rear passenger window. I turned slowly. Nothing. The car was dark, empty. My reflection looked back at me, pale and trembling. I unlocked the door, slid in and jammed the lock down again. Then, as I reached for the ignition, my phone lit up on the seat beside me. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. God help me, I shouldn't have. Hello? A pause. Then a voice. Soft, feminine, whispering. You shouldn't have stopped. I dropped the phone like it burned me. The line stayed open for a second, faint static hissing through the speaker. Then 3 slow taps, this time through the phone itself, like someone tapping a mic. I killed the call and threw the phone into the glove compartment. That's when my headlights flickered on by themselves. The beams cut across the parking lot and illuminated the black sedan, the same one from before. It was parked sideways now, half blocking the exit. Hood down. No driver. Jesus Christ, I whispered. I reversed fast, spun the wheel, and tore back onto the highway. I didn't look back. I didn't stop driving until the sun was coming up and I saw the Portland skyline in the distance. My phone was dead when I got home. When I plugged it in, the call log showed nothing. No unknown number, no record of an incoming call at all. For days after, I barely slept. I told a few friends at work what happened. Most of them just said I was overtired, overworked, seeing things. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was the highway playing tricks on me. But here's the thing. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through a local Facebook group when I saw a post from a woman named Gina Morrow. It said, "Anyone else see a black sedan pulled over between Silver Run and Hollow Creek last night? Guy asked me for a ride, said his car broke down. I got a bad feeling and drove off. Couldn't sleep since." The comments were full of similar stories. One person claimed they saw it as far back as 2015. Always the same description. Always the same stretch of road. I stared at the screen for a long time before I finally shut my laptop. That was 2 years ago. Now, whenever I have to travel south, I take the coastal route, even if it adds hours. I can't bring myself to drive that way again. But sometimes, when I'm on an empty stretch at night with nothing but the sound of the tires and the low hum of the radio, I'll think I see Headley. I remember that day like it was yesterday, even though it was 28 years ago. It was early May 1997, and I had just finished my first year working at a small communications firm in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was 23, restless and itching for any excuse to escape the routine of my cubicle life. My best friends Marcus and Maya felt the same way. Marcus was always the instigator of our impulsive plans, with a grin that made you forget caution, while Maya had a wilder streak that matched his energy but grounded it with sharp intuition. It was a Friday afternoon when Marcus burst into my apartment with a wild idea. "Dude, we gotta hit the road. Nothing crazy, just a day trip. I heard about this old abandoned town out near Texarkana. Ghost stories, roadside diners, the works. Perfect for a little adventure," he said, waving a folded map around like it was treasure. Maya rolled her eyes but smirked. "You always pick the sketchiest places. But fine, I'll drive. You guys are hopeless otherwise," I laughed. "All right, I'm in. Let's make it a proper escape. No phones, no work emails, just the road." By 3 p.m., Maya's beat-up SUV was packed. We shoved in a cooler, snacks, a couple of thermoses of coffee, and Marcus's ever-growing obsession with cheap cameras. The sun was low in the sky and the highway stretched ahead like a silver ribbon leading to freedom. The first hour was easy. We joked, sang along to the radio, and laughed at Marcus's terrible attempts to imitate classic rock singers. But as the landscape flattened into stretches of pine and scrubland, the sense of isolation began to creep in. "Hey, did you see that car back there?" Marcus asked suddenly, pointing to a black SUV we hadn't noticed before. I squinted through the rearview mirror. Sure enough, a dark vehicle was trailing us at a distance, keeping pace perfectly with our speed. Probably just some tourist, Maya said casually, but I could hear the unease in her voice. To test it, Maya changed lanes, slowing slightly. The SUV mirrored her every move. Twice. That's weird, I muttered. Then, without warning, red and blue lights flashed in the rearview mirror. Maya's hand froze on the wheel. Shit, pull over. The SUV pulled up behind us as we came to a stop on the gravel shoulder. The air felt suddenly heavier, thick with tension. The man who stepped out of the SUV didn't look like a typical cop. He wore black tactical gear with no markings, no badge, nothing official except for a small, indiscernible patch on his shoulder. He lingered behind our vehicle, eyes scanning our SUV like it was prey. Marcus leaned forward, trying to peer through the tinted windows. Do we talk to him? Maya rolled down her window cautiously. Good evening, officer." The man's face was expressionless. His tone was flat when he finally spoke. "License and registration." Maya handed them over, voice barely steady. The man studied them for a moment, then walked back to his SUV. 10 minutes passed. 15. We exchanged nervous glances, whispering. Finally, the man returned, this time flanked by 2 others. My chest tightened. My palms were slick with sweat. "Are you military?" he asked Maya, nodding at a small sticker on the back of her SUV. "Yes," Maya replied, trying to sound casual. "All of us." "Why?" He paused. His posture stiffened. The 2 men behind him exchanged a look. Then almost mechanically he said, "Drive carefully. You're free to go." We didn't wait. As soon as the SUV moved, the black vehicle sped off, disappearing into the evening haze. The rest of the drive to Texarkana was silent, punctuated only by Marcus's shallow breaths and Maya's tense grip on the wheel. By the time we reached the outskirts of the ghost town, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and reds. The town itself was eerie in the fading light. Buildings were skeletal, windows shattered, signs peeling. Marcus insisted we explore, but Maya kept her keys ready, eyes darting to the shadows that seemed to shift in the corners of the empty streets. As we wandered, we found remnants of old homes, graffiti on every wall, and an abandoned diner with a faded neon sign that flickered weakly. Mama's Place. Inside, it smelled of dust and rot. Rusted chairs were overturned. The counter was sticky with decades-old grime. Marcus snapped photos while Maya muttered warnings, and I felt a prickling on the back of my neck like we were being watched. By the time we left the diner, darkness had settled completely. That's when we noticed headlights approaching, slow, deliberate, too large to be just another car. The black SUV was back. "Run," Marcus whispered, barely audible. "No," Maya said, gripping the wheel. "We drive now." The SUV followed, keeping pace, lights off this time, just a dark silhouette behind us. Every instinct screamed to escape, but our phones had no signal. The highway was deserted, and the feeling of being hunted was overwhelming. We drove for miles, winding through back roads, hoping to lose it, but it mirrored every turn, every acceleration. My throat was dry, and I could feel Marcus trembling beside me. Maya's knuckles were white on the wheel. Finally, we reached a small gas station. Maya slammed the brakes, and we all jumped out. The SUV stopped just short of the pumps, engine idling silently. 3 men got out. Same gear, same expressionless faces. "Stay in the car," one of them said, and even without badges, their tone commanded fear. Marcus whispered, "What do they want?" The tallest of the men stepped forward. "You don't belong here, leave now." Maya nodded furiously, eyes wide. We jumped back in and hit the road, tires squealing. The black SUV didn't follow this time. Weeks later, local news told the story. A young couple had been found dead along the same stretch of highway, their car abandoned, and witnesses claimed a black SUV had been seen near the scene. We never forgot that day. I still remember the way the leader froze when Maya mentioned the military, as if he suddenly realized we weren't easy targets. Even now, driving late at night, I catch myself checking the rearview mirror, wondering what could have happened if we hadn't had that sticker. I've always liked driving at night. There's something peaceful about empty highways. No traffic, no noise, just the soft rumble of the road and the glow of the dashboard lights. But after what happened last summer, I don't drive after dark anymore. Not alone, anyway. My name's Travis Hale, and this story starts on a Friday evening in June 2023, somewhere between Boise, Idaho, and Redding, California. I was heading down to visit my sister, who'd just had her first baby. It was supposed to be a simple overnight trip. 1 tank of gas, a couple energy drinks, and my old Chevy Colorado humming down the interstate. The sun was just starting to dip behind the hills when I pulled off at a gas station near Jordan Valley, one of those old roadside places with cracked pumps and a flickering open sign that looked like it hadn't been replaced since the 90s. I filled up, grabbed a Coke, and was about to get back in when I noticed another truck parked across the lot. Same make, same model, same dent in the rear bumper. At first I thought maybe I was just tired seeing patterns where there weren't any, but when the driver got out, my stomach dropped. He looked exactly like me. Same height, same beard, same flannel shirt, even the same grease stain near the collar. For a second I froze, half expecting him to laugh or say he was part of some prank show, but he didn't. He just stared back. Then he smiled, a slow, crooked smile, and said, "Didn't think I'd see you again this soon." I stammered something like, sorry, do I know you?" He tilted his head. "You should. I'm you, remember?" I tried to laugh it off, but my throat felt tight. "Yeah, okay, buddy. Take care." I jumped into my truck, turned the key, and pulled out fast. When I checked my mirror, his truck was still there. Engine idling. Headlights off. His figure just standing by the pumps, watching me drive away. For the next 30 miles, I told myself it was just some weirdo messing with me. Maybe a coincidence. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. By the time I reached McDermott, it was past midnight. I was exhausted and decided to stop at a little roadside motel. Peeling paint, buzzing sign, one sleepy clerk watching late-night TV behind the counter. "Room for one?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah," I said. "Just for the night." He handed me a key and said, "Room 6, don't mind the noise." Old pipes. I showered, set my phone on the nightstand, and collapsed onto the bed. I must have been asleep for an hour when I woke to 3 slow knocks on the door. Knock, knock. Knock. I waited, half expecting the clerk to say something. Nothing. Then again, knock, knock, knock. I swung my legs off the bed and peeked through the blinds. No one outside. Just the dim parking lot light buzzing. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Then I heard a whisper. Right behind me. "You shouldn't have left." I turned around fast, heart pounding, but the room was empty. The air conditioner hummed softly in the corner. My reflection stared back from the mirror across the room. Except it wasn't moving. I froze. My reflection just stood there smiling, even though my face was blank. Then slowly it lifted its hand and tapped the other side of the mirror. 3 times. That's when I bolted. I grabbed my keys, ran out barefoot, and didn't even bother checking out. I got in my truck and drove until the motel lights disappeared behind me. By sunrise, I was running on fumes. My GPS showed a rest stop about 10 miles ahead, so I pulled in to catch my breath. I sat there for a minute, trying to calm down, telling myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I saw it. A blue pickup parked 2 spaces down. Same truck, same license plate, and sitting inside, behind the wheel, was me. I could see his head turned slightly, just watching me through the windshield. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I started the engine and pulled onto the road. The other truck followed. No hesitation. For miles, it stayed behind me. Every turn I made, it matched perfectly. I sped up, it sped up. Slowed down. It slowed down. My stomach twisted into knots. I finally jerked the wheel and took an exit marked Old Quarry Road. The pavement turned to gravel, dust rising behind me. When I stopped, the other truck stopped too. He stepped out. Same face. Same clothes. Same everything. "You shouldn't be here," he said calmly, his voice identical to mine. "What the hell are you?" I shouted. He smiled again in that same crooked grin. "You really don't remember?" Then he tossed something onto the hood of my truck. My wallet. I grabbed it. It was my wallet. Same scuff mark, same ID. I patted my pocket. Mine was gone. When I looked up again, he was gone. Just gone. The road was empty. By the time I reached my sister's place in Redding that night, I looked like hell. She opened the door and gasped. "Travis, Jesus, what happened to you?" I told her I hadn't slept, that I'd been followed. She thought I was paranoid, overtired. She made me coffee, told me to crash on the couch. I tried to, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. That smile, those eyes. My eyes. The next morning, I went out to grab something from the truck, and that's when I saw it. The wallet on the driver's seat, open. But the photo on my license wasn't me anymore. It was him. It's been over a year now. I moved to Portland, sold the truck, even changed my number. But sometimes when I drive to work before sunrise, I'll glance in the side mirror and swear I see another blue pickup, trailing a few cars back. No plates, no headlights. And sometimes when I walk past a store window, my reflection lingers for just a second too long, smiling when I'm not. So yeah, I don't take long drives anymore. I stay off the highways after dark. Because out there, somewhere past mile marker 117, something that looks exactly like me is still waiting. I used to think that driving was therapy. That long stretches of highway, the hum of the tires against asphalt, the desert wind pouring through open windows. All of it had some kind of cleansing power. It was supposed to clear your mind, make you feel small in a good way. But that was before last summer. Before I learned that some roads don't take you somewhere. They take something from you. It started as nothing more than a weekend getaway. Just 4 friends looking to escape responsibility for a couple of days. There was me, Jordan. Then there was my best friend Tyler, his girlfriend Savannah, and her older brother Blake. We'd all just wrapped up our last semester at Cal State Fresno, and after weeks of finals and caffeine-fueled nights, we wanted to get out of town, somewhere quiet and away from everything. Tyler suggested we go camping at a place called Devil's Bluff, a remote cliffside overlooking the desert valley near the Nevada border. It's supposed to have the best sunrise view in the state, he'd said. I wasn't really an outdoors guy, but the thought of cold beer, music, and sleeping under the stars sounded too good to pass up. We packed everything into Tyler's old red Chevy Tahoe, the one with the cracked leather seats and the air freshener that smelled like fake pine. Savannah made sandwiches. Blake loaded the cooler with beer and ice, and I grabbed my camera thinking I'd finally get some decent shots for my travel blog that barely anyone read. We left Fresno around 2:30 that Friday afternoon. The plan was simple: drive 6 hours east, reach Devil's Bluff by sunset, set up camp, spend 2 nights, and head back Sunday. The first few hours were perfect. Tyler was driving, Savannah in the passenger seat with her feet up on the dashboard, and Blake and I sat in the back arguing over music. "Dude, no one wants to listen to your sad indie shit," Blake said, thumbing through my phone's playlist. "We're not driving through a breakup." "Better than your country garbage," I shot back. "Bro, nothing's better than Morgan Wallen after 3 beers, he said with a grin. Savannah laughed and tossed a Dorito at him. "You two are like 12. Tyler smiled, drumming his fingers on the wheel. "All right, let's compromise an old school mix. Little bit of everything. For a while it was easy. Warm wind, music blasting, laughter bouncing inside the car. Those moments felt infinite, like we were suspended between places untouchable. But the road has a way of changing its tone the farther you go. By the time we crossed into Nevada, the sun was low and the air shimmered with heat. The highway had emptied out. No gas stations, no motels, just open desert and telephone poles slicing the horizon. The GPS said we were about 90 minutes from Devil's Bluff. That's when Savannah pointed out something. "Hey, you guys notice there hasn't been a single car for like 30 minutes? Tyler shrugged. "It's Nevada. Nobody comes out here unless they're running from something." Blake chuckled. "Maybe we'll find a body." "Jesus, Blake," Savannah muttered, smacking his arm. "You're an ass." "Relax, it's a joke," but I couldn't help glancing out the window. The sun was melting behind the mountains and everything turned a deep rust color. The silence outside was thick, heavy, the kind that feels like it's listening. We stopped at a gas station about 40 miles from our turnoff, one of those ancient places that look like they've been forgotten by time. The sign out front read Henry's Fuel and Snacks, but half the letters were burned out. A single pump leaned sideways and a mangy dog slept in the shadow of a Coke machine. Inside, the air reeked of dust and old coffee. Shelves were half empty, a few bags of chips, some dusty cans of beans, and a fridge humming weakly with sodas. Behind the counter sat an old man with sunburned skin and gray stubble, wearing a faded baseball cap that said, US 95 Truckers. Tyler walked up first. "Hey, man, you still open?" The guy squinted at us like he hadn't seen people in a while. "Pump still works if you got cash." "Card reader's been dead since spring." We nodded. Tyler paid for gas, and while he went outside to pump, Savannah and I browsed for snacks. Blake, of course, started making conversation. "Quiet out here," he said to the man. "Been quiet for a long time," the man replied. His voice was gravelly, like he hadn't used it in days. "Not much traffic since they built the new bypass." "You from around here?" I asked. "Used to be," he said, staring at me with pale blue eyes. "Not much left to be from." I tried to smile, but he didn't return it. He just looked at us like he was studying something. When Savannah put a few waters and chips on the counter, he finally spoke again. "You folks heading east?" "Yeah," I said. "Devil's Bluff?" His eyes flicked up sharply. "You camping out there?" "Yeah, just for the weekend." He leaned forward slightly. "Road out that way gets tricky after sundown. You best stick to the main route. Don't take the back roads, even if the GPS tells you to." Tyler came back in just in time to hear that. "Appreciate the advice, sir, but we've got Google Maps." The man didn't smile. Maps don't help when the road decides to move. We all exchanged a look, not sure if he was joking. But his face stayed dead serious. He handed back the change, then added almost as an afterthought, "If you see a car stopped out there, keep driving. Don't stop for nobody." Blake smirked as we walked out. Classic small-town horror movie shit. "Come on," I said, rolling my eyes. "Guy's probably just lonely." Tyler laughed. "Yeah, but if some weirdo waves us down, I'm flooring it." We got back on the road just as the sun slipped below the mountains. Within minutes, the world turned black except for the two white beams from our headlights cutting through the desert night. Savannah dozed off against the window, and the rest of us fell quiet. The farther we went, the narrower the road became. No signs, no mile markers, just the occasional coyote darting across the dirt shoulder. Around 10 p.m., the GPS announced, "Turn left in 0.5 miles onto County Road 17. Tyler squinted. "You guys see a turnoff?" Blake leaned forward. "Yeah, right there." It was barely visible, a dirt road branching off into nothing marked by a bent sign that just said Bluff Trail. Tyler hesitated but turned anyway. The Tahoe jolted as the pavement gave way to gravel. "Man, this road's rough," I said, gripping the handle. "We're fine," Tyler said. "It's only supposed to be 7 miles." But those 7 miles stretched like an eternity. The path wound through dead brush and rock, the headlights bouncing across uneven ground. The night felt too quiet, like the desert itself was holding its breath. Then, about halfway there, I saw it. A car on the shoulder ahead, hazards flashing weakly. "Yo," Blake said. "You guys see that?" Tyler slowed. "Yeah, someone stuck?" Savannah woke up, blinking. "What's going on?" "There's a car up ahead," I said. "Looks broken down." As we got closer, we saw a man standing beside it, waving both arms. He looked maybe mid-30s, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. His face was pale in the headlights, and there was something off about the way he moved. Twitchy, jerky, like he couldn't stand still. "Should we stop?" Savannah asked. Blake said, "Hell no. That's exactly how people get robbed out here." But Tyler slowed to a crawl. "He might need help, man." The old man's words echoed in my head. "If you see a car stopped out there, keep driving." "Tyler, don't," I said quietly. Something's not right. The man stepped into the middle of the road, waving frantically. "Hey, please stop." Tyler hesitated, then eased the Tahoe to a stop about 20 feet away. The man staggered closer, shouting something we couldn't hear through the glass. I leaned forward to get a better look. That's when I saw it. Blood. Dark and smeared down his left arm. "Jesus Christ," Savannah whispered. "He's hurt." Before any of us could react, the man's expression changed. The panic vanished, replaced by something flat. Cold. He turned abruptly and ran back behind his car. "What the—" Blake started, but then a second figure darted out of the darkness, low and fast, from the passenger side of the road, heading straight for our car. "Go." I yelled. Tyler slammed the gas. The Tahoe roared forward, gravel exploding behind us. In the rear view, I saw a silhouette sprinting after us, its movements wrong. Too quick, too fluid. Then the red taillights of that broken-down car flickered and vanished into the dark. No one spoke. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard it hurt. The only sound was the rumble of the tires and Savannah's uneven breathing. What the hell was that? Blake finally said. Tyler's knuckles were white on the wheel. I don't know, but we're not stopping again. Savannah's voice cracked. They tried to trap us. Shh, I said, staring out the back window. Just drive. We didn't see another car the rest of the way. When we finally reached Devil's Bluff, no one even mentioned setting up camp. There was an old roadside lodge nearby. A squat building with a flickering neon sign that read Sunset Motor Inn. Tyler parked out front and went inside. The lobby lights were dim, and the woman behind the counter barely looked up. One night, Tyler said quietly, sliding over some cash. Room for 4. She handed him a brass key and muttered, Room 8. Far end. We unloaded in silence. The room smelled like mildew and cigarettes, but it was shelter. Savannah locked the door 3 times. Blake turned on the TV just for background noise. No one touched the beers. Around midnight, I couldn't sleep. I stepped outside, hoping the air would clear my head. The desert stretched out black and endless. In the distance, I saw headlights. A pair, small and steady, coming down the same road we'd come from. I froze. The lights slowed near the motel, then stopped about 50 yards away. They stayed there, engine idling, no movement. My mouth went dry. After maybe a full minute, the car backed up slowly, then turned and disappeared into the night. When I went back inside, I told the others. Tyler's face went pale. You're sure it was the same car? I think so. Blake shook his head. Could have been anyone, man. Yeah? I said, and then why just stop and sit there? No one answered. We slept in shifts after that, though sleep barely came. Every creak made my heart jump. By morning, the fear had settled into something numb. We packed up fast and started heading back toward California. No music, no laughter, just silence and exhaustion. An hour later, Savannah whispered, You guys, look behind us. I turned to and my stomach dropped. A beige sedan trailed us from a distance. The same one, Tyler muttered. No way. No fucking way. He pressed the gas, pushing 70, then 80. The sedan stayed with us. Not close enough to see the driver, but close enough that we knew it was deliberate. Then suddenly it turned off onto a side road and vanished. Just like that. Gone. No one said another word until we hit the state line. When we finally rolled into Fresno that night, we dropped everyone off one by one without much talking. It felt like the end of something, not just the trip, but whatever easy trust we used to have in the world. 2 days later, I saw a news alert. Authorities investigating disappearance of 2 travelers near Nevada Highway 50. Their last known location was near County Road 17, the same route to Devil's Bluff. I showed Tyler the article. He just stared at it, his face hollow. That could have been us, he said softly. After that, we drifted apart. Savannah moved in with her sister. Blake stopped answering texts. Tyler sold the Tahoe a few months later. Said he couldn't stand the way it sounded on the highway anymore. As for me, I haven't driven that stretch again. Sometimes when I'm out late on an empty road, I'll see headlights appear behind me in the rear view. Small, distant, steady. And for a second, my hands start to shake, because I can't help but wonder if the road still remembers us, and if one night it decides to finish what it started.